evening, everyone. I just want to make sure I'm going to get this clear because it's a little hard to see since the computer screen is actually behind it and the clock is so big. It's actually kind of hard to see the screen at the same time. But as promised, I meant to make the video of the Ogee clock that I had fixed. I'm not exactly sure of the exact date of this clock, but I do know it's at least 100 years old from what I was able to find of it. Unfortunately, the writing that's in the back there, the paper, most of it has actually fallen off already. But what I got from the name of the clock company, when I tried to look it up, I really couldn't find any information on it. But just in judging in the movement and the fact that it's actually held together by pins, probably can't see them. Now, unfortunately, those aren't the original pins because the original pins that was on it, 2 of them were actually gone, and the other ones were, which pretty much as soon as I pulled on them a little bit, they just disintegrated. So what I did is I took a small paper clip and cut it into sections and actually made, in a sense, new locking pins for it. I don't know if you can see them, probably too blurry, but they actually work really well because you can bend them and they don't snap, and they fit just perfectly inside the holes. So I know that the clock is at least 100 years old. Its exact year, its exact date, I don't really know. Like I said, I did try to find it in the paper, but it's really, really hard to see, and a lot of the paper has flaked away over the years, unfortunately. But this clock did need some work, and I gotten it, I don't know, about a year or 2 ago, and I had gotten the clock to run, but I still wasn't satisfied. It wasn't running quite to its potential. So what I actually did this time around, I just finished servicing it. I worked on it yesterday, then I worked on it today. With the movement, I cleaned and oiled it because it did need it. I usually try to do that with my clocks every couple of years. Usually every 2 to 4 years is a good repetition as far as good scheduling as far as cleaning and oiling on them, especially if it's an older clock. So I did do that, and the other thing I also did too is these pulleys that are on the top here, that one and that one, I replaced both of those because this one actually wasn't too bad. That pulley was actually in pretty decent shape, so I actually moved that pulley. I don't know if you'll be able to see it. Well, you can kind of see where the cable kind of goes through it. Right in there, I put that pulley there. But this pulley right here, that's the one that's for the time train, was so worn. Actually, I got it right here. And I got to watch this. This is going to be going off in a little bit, and I want to show you. See, look at this. Look at that pulley. Actually, let me put it like this. If you look at the difference between them. See, there's the new pulley. There's the old one. Look how worn that is. You can actually see, if you look at the bushing hole on one side, I don't know if you'll be able to see it. See how small that hole is right there? And if I spin it around the other way, look how big that is. Look how it wore down. So that pulley was just about completely non-functional. You could hear the typical groaning and creaking every time the clock ran, and every time it got hung up. So these clocks don't run under very much power, even though it's got the weighs about 3.5 pounds. But by the time it goes through all the pulleys and everything, there really isn't much tension on it. So if there's any interruption in the power source, these clocks tend to stop pretty quickly. And you can't even see what I'm talking about. I gotta bring the camera down a little bit. So you can see it's running really nicely now. That pulley that's in there was actually in good shape. So I really didn't have to replace that one. But you can get a good look at the movement. I wish this camera was a little bit clearer in its quality. See, it has a nice even tick to it. I don't know if you'll be able to see the escapement wheel. If I can hold the camera still enough, you might be able to see the recoil. Probably not, though. It's pretty blurry. You can see it's got a nice even tick to it. It does have a very, very, very slightly exaggerated entrance beat, but it's a lot better than it was, because before, when I got the clock, the verge assembly was so far away that its tick was way off. I mean, the one, it was just barely getting it, and then the other side, it was really, really exaggerated. It was just, you barely moved the verge assembly for the escapement wheel. So basically, the pendulum wasn't getting any kind of a push. You can see the pendulum's getting a good swing now. Find it. There it is. See, it's got a nice wide range of motion it's doing now. Unfortunately, that's not the original pendulum bob. I'm still trying to find one of those, but that's what it would pretty much look like. So It's going to be going off in a minute or two here, so I wanted to have you watch it as it goes off and listen to it. Then I'll talk a little bit more about how I fixed it. And again, like I said, I'm doing this blindly, so forgive me if it's not exactly visible. I'll try to get it as close as I can here. Hold the camera as still as I can. I don't know, it should be going off any second. It does gong pretty quickly. It's pretty typical of most 30-hour Ogee clocks. They have a pretty quick gong. I guess from what I understand, the 8-day ones are a little bit slower. But one thing that's it's about to go off soon. I just saw it start to move. Okay, hold the camera still. But one thing I notice now is that it actually gongs at a nice steady rate. As well, again, once this is done gonging, I'll explain a little bit more about what I did as far as repairs go. So it did need quite a bit of work. That clock that you hear in the background is my cuckoo clock. I don't know if I ever told you about that one, but that's the one that's 94 years old and it's about to go off, so I'm just going to be quiet. You can see it has a nice steady, its gonging was at a nice steady rate this time because one of the repairs that I had also made too, and again, I don't know if you'll be able to see it or not, it's pretty, but if you look at the bottom, the base of that fan, right there. You can see, let's see if I can get a closer view of it. See that one, that pinion that's right there? It's really blurry. I wish this was clearer, but that's called a lantern pinion. And there's little rods, you can kind of see them, little steel rods that run down through there between. They're called trundles. And what it does is it interlocks with the teeth of the gear beneath it, so it can, like I said, so it stays in contact, and so that gear basically spins the governor. That's called a governor, by the way. And what that does is that keeps the mechanism, that keeps that train that make a gong from running too quickly because it catches air. But anyways, what happened is the trundles that were in this clock were so worn, especially that one right there, the governor ones. That one, those it was probably about 90% worn through. I mean, if it had gone probably another year, six months, a year, it probably would have gone right through them, and then it would have been a major issue. So I actually replaced all the trundles and every lantern pinion that's in this clock. So basically all the gears, the ones that were on the gonging side were actually worse, considerably worse than the ones that were on the time side. Although they had some wear on them too, but they were probably only maybe about 20 or 30% worn. The ones for the governor were the worst, but I actually just went through and replaced all of the trundles. So this way they were all in good shape. The other thing I also did too is the levers for the clock. Again, you probably won't be able to see them. No, not really, but you can see the lever. You can see the lever arbors, but not the. But I put little springs on there, and hair springs or whatever they're called, or something like that. But basically, what it does is it makes it so because what would happen is this would occasionally jump. Like once it goes down into the slot to stop, sometimes if there wasn't enough tension to hold it in place, it would jump and skip and go to the next one, and then it would be out of sync with what the clock actually reads. So I put a spring on both that lever and the other lever, so this way you don't have to worry about that. I didn't have to worry about that skipping anymore. So basically, the other thing that I needed to do is I needed to, in order to replace these pulleys, and a lot of people don't know about it, is you can actually see the result of somebody trying to repair it on this side. Somebody actually tried to chisel it out, which thankfully they didn't do too much damage. But in order to get those out, you actually have to take this backside actually has to come off. Again, I'm doing this blindly, so you kind of have to bear with me. But see, you have to be very careful when you take it off. It's actually the arbors, the tops of the arbors are actually right behind this wood right here. And so what you have to do is you have to be very, very carefully take this off. And like I said, you're dealing with wood that's over 100 years old and it's pretty brittle. And what it is there's several pins, locking pins or whatever you want to call them. fastening pins that go through that are bigger ones like nails, and then there's tiny little nails that go all the way around it, and you have to be very careful when you're popping this loose, because if you go too quickly, this wood could disintegrate, or the wood for the main frame too. So I very carefully got this backboard off. Thankfully I got it off in one piece and didn't damage anything. And like I said, I'm really careful when I did it, so I just did it. It took me probably about 20 minutes to get it off, but I'd rather just take my time and do it slow than be hasty, and because like they always say, haste makes waste. But anyways, the arbors were behind it. Once I got this wood off, then I was able to access the arbors and just pull them out. And they were actually in there pretty tight. And then once I did that, then I was able to replace both of the pulleys. And because again, like I said, this one wasn't so bad, the one for the gonging train, but the one for the time train, that one was, well, as you can see, it's pretty significantly worn. But that's pretty much it. Again, I can't get back too far to show the whole clock. Well, you can see the majority of it. Obviously, the clock does have a face. Oh yeah, and the other thing I had to do is, before I took the backboard off, is these supporting brackets right here for the movement had to come out. So again, really delicate process of getting those off without breaking them. But again, thankfully I didn't. Nothing got damaged. Let me shut the door so you can kind of see the painting that's on this. It's starting to flake away a little bit, but after the clock being over 100 years old, that's pretty understandable. Kind of see it's pretty nice. The only thing I'm not too thrilled about is the pendulum doesn't swing evenly in that opening there. It disappears all the way on the right side, as you can see, but just maybe half or 3/4 of it on the left. Unfortunately, there isn't much I can do about that, because that just basically means that something is off-centered, whether it's the movement or just the painting itself. Something's just off-centered, and that's why the pendulum doesn't swing quite evenly on both sides. But it's one of those things, if it ain't fixed, don't break it. Or, no, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. There we go. Let's get the saying right. It's late. Sometimes I get a little mixed up when I talk here. But that's pretty much it. Like I said, this clock is in good shape, and all of the bushings in the clock were in good shape. And you can see, I don't know if you really can't see details, but they were all pretty nice and circular. There really wasn't any wear in any of them. They were all in pretty good shape. Like I said, again, you can't see them too much, but and that black that you see around there, that's not, I mean, like I said, I tried to get that off. I think it's just, I don't know, from somebody doing something to it in the past, trying to clean it or whatever. It's actually the brass itself somehow got blackened, but it's not dirt, because trust me, I made sure that it was cleaned off as much as I could get it. So, and whatever it is, it doesn't seem to want to come off, and I'm not going to muck with it too much. Verge assembly had to be, like I said, I did some adjusting to that. Can't really see it because again it's really blurry. Maybe if I back up a little bit, you can see a little better. Somebody had soldered that wire back on once upon a time, and since it didn't seem to affect how the clock actually ran, I figured, why replace it? It works perfectly fine, so I might as well just leave it in place. But everything else in this clock is original. There's nothing except for the pendulum bob. Everything else is original. Nothing was replaced except for the pulleys, obviously. And the cabinet's in relatively good condition. There's a few issues with it, but again, I think it gives a clock character, so I'm not going to go crazy. And you can see that the door there, the strip, I guess the strip must have come off once upon a time in the middle there. It's got some nicks on the bottom. On the back side there, towards the bottom, you can probably see a chunk of the wood missing there. But again, it doesn't seem to really affect anything major, so I'm not too worried about it. Like I said, I want to keep things as original as possible, but that's pretty much it. Like I said, it does have a face, and I will put the face back on once I'm done making this video here. Maybe I'll make another video of it with the face on so you can see what that looks like. The face is original. A lot of the paint has flaked off on it though, but again, I think that gives it character, so you might as well just leave it as is. And that's pretty much it. So it's a 30-hour Ogee clock. So I wind it every 24 hours just to make sure it doesn't stop. And probably be good for another 2 to 4 years before it needs to be serviced again. Now, one thing I do need to get for it, and will, is there's actually dust covers that go over top of these pulleys here that'll keep all dust and everything from getting inside there and contaminating the oil of the movement. So I'll get those at some point, but so I haven't too much dust in this room. It's not a real big rush to do it, but it's something that should definitely be done. There's some kind of dust Usually you can buy them, but you usually have to stain them yourself to get them to match the clock, because they're usually either too light or not stained at all. But that's pretty much it. So that was my project that I did for the last couple days. And the other one that I fixed is this guy right here. This is actually a customer's Kit Kat clock. You'd be surprised how hard it is to get one of those, especially the original ones like this. They actually, what happened with this one is the mechanism that moves the pendulum and the eyeballs back and forth, which is actually one mechanism in addition. You got the quartz movement, which works the clock, but then you've got another mechanism, which is battery operated as well, that operates the tail and the eyes, and that's the part that went bad. And these clocks, again, are so hard to find. It's really difficult to get parts for them, but thankfully, eventually, I was able to do it. It took a month and a half, but so he's the other one that I worked on. Unfortunately, these guys can be difficult to work on too, because instead of just, you know, putting them in there, they actually glue everything in place. They glue the quartz in place instead of using the, I guess, the little nut and washer that holds in most quartz clocks movements into their place, and then the actual mechanism that operates the pendulum, that was also glued in place. So unfortunately, I had to sacrifice one Kit Kat clock with a good movement to get this one to work. So, but well, that's the way it goes. So at least that one's working good now. I finally got the eyeballs to move relatively evenly back and forth, because at first they were moving too far to the right, and so just did a little bit of rigging with it and finally got that working right. So that's it. Until next time. Until I get another clock to fix. Hopefully this video took